Speaking of Putin's friends, we start with the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, who gave an interview to Russian propaganda journalists in which he said that he had moved a third of his army to the border with Ukraine. Lukashenko says he has moved almost a third of his entire army to the border with Ukraine due to the alleged presence of 120,000 troops. The Ukrainian military, and I will quote the direct speech of the proclaimed president of Belarus himself, he says the following: "Seeing their, that is, Ukraine's, aggressive policy, we sent our military there and deployed them at certain points, as in the event of war and defense, our military would be along the entire border. Moreover, special services, special units, Alpha, Almas, and others are working there. They are the most trained, they are doing their job." Lukashenko believes that Ukrainian troops are stationed in large numbers on the border with Belarus because they think that Putin will allegedly attack. In response, Lukashenko says he had to deploy almost a third of his army to reinforce what was previously on the border between Ukraine and Belarus. The self-proclaimed head of the country also noted that, and I quote, "It is like death. Withdraw our troops from the border with Ukraine. There is a war going on." Well, let me remind you that before that, Lukashenko said that Russia, in case of aggression against Belarus, would send its troops into the country to provide military support. And I must say that Belarusians always use this pretext that Ukraine might attack them in order to bring their troops to the border with Ukraine. Now we see that after Belarus had previously moved military equipment and its military to the border, including missile systems, even tanks, the Belarusian Ministry of Defense demonstrated very demonstratively how they were sending all this equipment to the border with Ukraine. And now Lukashenko says that as of now, almost a third of his army is along the border with our country. But the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine responded to Lukashenko's latest nonsense and said that this is a new portion of injection. But in fact, the situation on the border with Belarus has not changed. The State Border Guard Service of Ukraine does not record an increase in the number of equipment or personnel of Belarusian troops near the border with Ukraine. The situation on the border with the Republic of Belarus remains unchanged. As we can see, Lukashenko's rhetoric does not change either, constantly escalating the situation with regularity to please the terrorist country. We are not seeing an increase in equipment or personnel of Belarusian units near our border. Demchenko responded to the journalist's request to comment on Lukashenko's current words about the alleged deployment of almost a third of his army to the border with Ukraine, and the officer noted that the self-proclaimed president of Belarus simply continues to inflame the information situation with aggressive statements that are not true. Today, Lukashenko gave an interview to Russian propagandists in which he said that the Belarusian authorities have allegedly deployed a third of their army on the border with Ukraine. But at the same time, we must understand that while we do not see any significant statements from the Russian dictator, the Belarusian dictator is fighting back for him, so to speak. And it is probably not for nothing that the Kremlin sends its propagandists to Lukashenko, and it is not surprising that such an interview appears now.